Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Q&A on the spiritual life with John Khoury. And we'll continue our talk on Lectio Divina. Jean, in our last video, you taught us a prayer, a very powerful prayer, that if we're facing a situation where we're struggling to find time to work in sleep and time to give ourselves to the Lord in Lectio Divina, you mentioned that there was a prayer we could pray that God would help us rearrange our lives, reprioritize our schedules so that we could give more time to Him. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Hi, Camila. Thank you for having me, and hi, everybody. Yes, we were talking about this prayer, and again, I insist a lot. This prayer is quote unquote dangerous because simply it works. So it's very important to be ready and to mean it deeply when we do it. I do not doubt your sincerity. I'm not talking about you, of course, Camila. I'm talking to whoever is listening to us. I do not doubt your sincerity. God doesn't doubt your sincerity, but I think it's a personal decision. This prayer is a decision. So let me explain the context of this prayer. The starting point of this prayer, which is, Lord, reorder my schedule, will help me find a place in my day for that important exercise, or this important type of prayer, which is Lectio Divina. The starting point is having read or watched videos or teaching on Lectio Divina and having reached a level of conviction. I am convinced now. I reached a point where I see, by the grace of God and by a teaching or something that I read somewhere, I see with greater clarity how important is Lectio. Now I am convinced. So intellectually, mentally, I see the goodness of that. I see why it is important, etc., etc. So you are conquered already mentally. In your conscience, you know that this is important. But on a practical way, you are torn because you don't have that time. You wish to have an hour and a quarter. And trust me, as I said in the other video, even if you are a monk or a religious or a nun or a consecrated, or you belong to a modern movement in the church, or old movement in the church, or you are a third order of this or that, or you are even a priest, you can very easily find an excuse and say, well, I don't have time. Why? Because it's very easy to fill your day. There are plenty of things to be done. So I don't think it's a cultural or depending on the states of life. I think it belongs to everybody, and it's a decision and a change that involves every person, but it has to be the right time. So what is the solution? The solution is to say to the Lord, now that I'm convinced, I know how good is Lectio Divina, and sincerely I want to practice it, but on a practical way, I don't find that time. Now, I have a story, and I promised I might tell this story. This is a few years ago, like I think it was in '98, if I'm not wrong, in another country, not where I am. I'm in London, UK, so it was another country. I was explaining Lectio Divina, and I mentioned this prayer. If you are stuck, if you don't have that time, and if you feel that Lectio is important, just do this prayer. And I was explaining this. I was traveling, so I was in that country. I left the country because I finished my course, and I went back to where I was living. And I came back. That was in June. I came back in October. And once I arrived, a gentleman who was one of my students there taking the course phoned me and said, I need to meet you. It's urgent. Help, help, help. So I said, but what's the matter? He said, I did the prayer that you invited us to do. So I forgot, because usually I don't teach prayers. I teach how to pray, but then you pray the way you want, no? How you understood it. So I never give a specific prayer to say to people. It's not my style. He said, no, the prayer you mentioned the other time, you remember? And he reminded me of that, this prayer. No, God, I don't have time for Lectio, but please, I would like to start to practice it. So rearrange my day, the schedule, so I could do. He said, I did this prayer. Oh, I was delighted. He said, and it worked. Oh, I was beyond delighted. He said, yeah, but there is a big, serious problem here. So he told me his story. We met, and he told me the story. He said, look, I am a math teacher. The last year, A-levels, we say in the UK, the last year in schools. So you're about to enter in college. And I am a very renowned teacher. And in his country, the teachers don't get enough. They're paid very low, so they have to compensate that with personal tuitions. So they organize personal tuition after the school when they are back home. So they might open their house, and then the students will come and have personal tuitions, and this is how they will earn their life and be able to sustain their life. And he was married and had his wife was pregnant. So he said, I did this prayer, and it was about almost to, we are about almost to start summer in that country. You don't work in July, August. So he said that was fine. I reorganized everything. Everything was, even my wife understood that I needed to be alone. I set a place in the house where I could just be there with the Lord. My wife would answer the phone. I wouldn't, it's an old story. The mobiles were about to start. So it was fantastic. So, of course, not working summer meant as well an opportunity for him to rearrange and have enough time. But then he said, now it's October, and they start studying, I don't know, in September, maybe in that country, the new year. Scholar year. So he said, and I don't have any student now coming for tuition. And if it continues like that, I can't live. I can't have enough money to pay the bills and to support my family. And my wife is pregnant; she's about to give birth. And if it continues like that, it's not possible. So he was panicking. In fact, he saw that the Lord helped him, strengthened him. It's like fasting, if you want. He was working too much. He didn't have time because of the tuitions. He used to give tuitions till 11 p.m. And then now he has no tuition at all. The year started, and since it's the last year, you would usually get already students from the beginning of the year itself, because they need to be to be strong, to strengthen their maths, etc. from the beginning of the year, and don't lose time. So from the beginning of the year, he didn't have any. So he was panicking. He said, if it continues like that, it doesn't work. So you see what happened. He was like eating too much, working too much, and suddenly he went into a state of fasting, which is not becoming a workaholic and switching. But here it was drastic, because he switched, and it was summer, he switched completely to total leisure, to reorganize your day and have lecture in the morning, for instance, no? But now that the school started, he continued with the same new rhythm, but was panicking because he needed income. So what I said to him was the following. I said, you see, God answered your question. He, in a way, kept the personal tuition that all the students, the children, kept them away from coming to you, because he wants to show you that you were overworking. God wants us to work, but not overwork. So there is a prudence here that you need to use. You need to decide yourself that you will teach, for instance, give 1 or 2 tuitions in the afternoon, and that's it, you see? So from an excess to the other excess, now you will be with God, understanding how God works, coming to the balance. You see what I mean? So just to sum up all this, I want to say the following. If you really have the desire to practice Lectio Divina, don't feel any pressure on your conscience if you don't have time. Just if you feel that's really what you mean and this is the right time, say to the Lord, please reorganize my life. I want to have you as my priority. Of course, he knows that you need to earn your life. Of course, he knows that you have duties. This is why I say, don't worry. If it's not the right time, if it takes 1, 2, or 3 years without starting to practice Lectio Divina the way I describe it, that's absolutely fine. Don't feel guilty because of that. But it's important to keep in mind this prayer and this desire, and allow the Lord to guide you step by step until maybe one day, as he did with this teacher, he reshuffled completely his life, and he went back teaching. He had his tuition, but knew that he had to stop at a certain point, maybe accepting earning a little bit less, but with a more balanced life where God is the first one.
Right. Thank you, Jean. And thanks everyone for watching another Q&A on the spiritual life with Jean Khoury.
Thank you very much, Camilla. Bye-bye, everyone.